Strangely never been here before, and it's probably a lot nicer in the summertime. It is a pretty cool morning, but what a cool view of the Raleigh skyline over here. Pretty cool. When I pulled up here, I saw two older people walking around here. They're birders. They had their tripod and their spotting scope and all that. And I was like, okay, the birders are out here. It's probably a good spot. They were walking through here. So I think this would be a good spot to come with a long lens. Check out some of the birds and wildlife around here. But that is not for today. Testing out this new old camera. Looks like there's all sorts of construction and material over here. Looks like there's a trail up this way. Let's go check this out. So there's not really much going on this trail here, and this is probably a lot different in the summertime, of course. But what I do like here is it's nice and quiet, and you can see the Raleigh skyline behind me here. So I think this is a good spot to send the drone up and get some shots of downtown. So this is such a cool trail, and I've never been here before, which is kind of embarrassing. This is a pretty famous park here in Raleigh, and it's just so fun to go to new places and explore and check things out and sort of unlock some creativity and find some cool places that you might sort of register that this would be cool at sunset, or this would be cool in the fall or in the spring or whatever, so that when you need to go out and shoot, or you feel like going out and shoot, you're feeling inspired, you have places to go, because going to the same places over and over again can be a little bit challenging, and sort of lock up some of that creativity. So just get out and shoot, go explore. I'm sure there's places in your area that you have not been to or have not been to recently. So as I walk across this field here, I see all these flowers popping up everywhere. You can see some of these right here. I don't, obviously not try not to step on them. I didn't realize what was going on here. Of course, I did no research, but there's a sign up here that says flowers field. So sometimes it's good to do a little bit of research. Sometimes it's a little bit of fun to just explore. So I do see why this place is cool, and I definitely want to come back here. It is late January here, and it's a little bit chilly, and it is a weekday morning, so that's why there's nobody here. But very cool spot. I love all around the park, they leave all these little more natural areas. And this, you can see there's a little bit of water here. So there's birds coming to drink and hang out and find shelter and find stuff to eat. So it's cool. It brings a lot of wildlife around without just like clearing things out, which I see in so many parks. All right, so this is a great place to test the dynamic range and see what the camera can do. We got the shadows here, we got the bright sky. We see what's going on here. Also got a guy with his dog here, which is cool. Wow, another just massive field here. This one's actually called the Big Field. They label stuff really cool around here. So this is a nice spot. So much open space. Back at the car now, and I think this kind of wraps up this shoot. I'm gonna go home and check out the footage from this guy and talk a little bit about my experience so far shooting with the S1H, but also why this is such a sleeper camera in my opinion, because I think this camera is highly forgotten about. So that's what we're gonna talk about. Also, testing out the DJI Action 4, which I always use an actual camera, but I'm experimenting with using an action camera for a little bit of vlogging stuff, just to make my life a little bit easier and get myself out there more often. All right, see you at home. So all the footage that you just saw, other than the DJI Action 4 and the drone footage, was shot with the S1H and my Contax Zeiss 28mm f2.8. It was all shot in 4K 10-bit 422 in Vlog, and that's oversampled from 6K. So let me talk about why I picked up this camera, because I think a lot of people are probably wondering why that would be, and I think a lot of people either forgot about this camera or just never knew about this camera if you are just getting into video and that sort of stuff. So I somewhat recently picked up the S5 and I made a video about that with a bunch of sample footage and my thoughts about Lumix and my experience using the camera. So definitely go check out the video. I'll leave that video link down below. Now, there are a couple things about the S5 that I don't love, and so it's kind of one of the reasons that led me towards looking at the S1H, but I'll get more into that. I also made a video recently about how the fact that most of the cameras that we're using right now for shooting video are about 4 years old, and you should definitely check out that video too. I'll leave that link down below. But in the process of doing some camera research and looking for a different camera than what I had, because of course I'm always looking to try new things, I started looking at the S1H. And what I was looking for when I was going through that research was I was looking for a camera that had really good image quality. I know we're all looking for good image quality, but something a little bit extra. And I wanted something to be somewhat portable so I could take it out and do some shooting out in different urban and rural and hiking and all those kinds of situations. Now I thought about using my Komodo, but it's just not for that situation. I wanted something that was a little bit more self-contained and had IBIS, which the S1H has great IBIS. Also, I would love to have a camera that has an optical low pass filter, which this camera does. So this kind of fit the bill in a lot of situations. I'm going to talk about that throughout the rest of this video. And I'm going to be using this camera hopefully to like go out and test lenses and go out and shoot and just make a bunch of cool stuff. So I think, like I said, a lot of people don't know much about the S1H or just forgot about it. But I want to give you some information about it in case you're unaware or forgot. So first of all, the S1H was announced in May 2019 and it shipped in the fall of 2019. So it is almost 5 years old. Now the camera sells for $4,000 new, although it is currently on sale for $2,500. I got mine used for $1,600. So not a super expensive camera in the world of video cameras. Now amongst the Lumix users, I'm pretty sure that the S1H is just known to be a super good video camera and kind of more of a cinema camera than the other hybrids. Also the fact that this camera is actually Netflix approved, which means something to some people and doesn't mean something to other people, but either way, this camera was good enough to be Netflix approved, so it is a very powerful video camera. So I want to run through some of the specs and features of this camera because, as I said, I think a lot of people forgot about this camera, don't know much about it. Now, as I'm talking about these specs and features, remember, this camera came out in 2019, and a lot of these things are things that we're still looking for in cameras, so it kind of blows my mind that this came out almost 5 years ago. So it has a 24.2 megapixel sensor, it has dual native ISO, it shoots 6K video or oversampled 4K internally, it'll shoot open gate, it has anamorphic D-squeeze, external 12-bit RAW recording. As I said earlier, it has an optical low pass filter, which for me personally is a huge deal because it eliminates the moire that you get with these higher resolution sensors. This isn't as much of a big deal for photography, but for video, and as a videographer myself, I cannot stand when there's moire, and you get a lot of that in some of these more modern cameras, and a lot of camera manufacturers are stopping, they're not putting OLPFs in their cameras, so I really love when it's in there. This camera has amazing IBIS, which if you haven't used a Lumix camera, their IBIS is incredible. It has a fan, and it doesn't overheat. I know that sounds crazy to just mention, but this is 2019 that we're talking about here in terms of the tech. It also has a 5.76 million dot EVF. And check this out. It actually has a tilty flippy screen. So this is something that, of course, the A7R5, which came out recently, was praised to have. This came out in 2019. That's pretty crazy. It also has, they claim to have weather sealed construction, which is nice. This camera is pretty big and heavy, but it feels very well made and very solid. It also has an L mount, which is really nice because there are some decent L mount lens options out there, but it's also really easy to adapt vintage and cinema lenses. It has an optional hot shoe XLR audio device, which, again, thinking back to 2019, that's pretty cool that they were making that an option. So if you need to get XLR audio into this sort of mirrorless style body, you can do that. It also has dual SD cards, which is nice to have. So a lot of great features with this camera. And it's just kind of, again, it's amazing to me that this camera is 5 years old. So it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Of course, there are some negatives about this camera. First of all, the autofocus is not reliable. And that's okay with me because for me, I'm not using this to film myself. I'm using this to film, I'm gonna be behind the camera, I'm gonna be testing lenses and stuff like that. So not having reliable autofocus is okay with me. I'm starting to use manual focus more and more, and especially when I'm using cameras like the Komodo and the R5C and the S1H and stuff like that. I am using manual focus a lot. It does have cropped 4K 60, which again is a similar story to a lot of the cameras we're talking about in 2024. This is something that we've been dealing with for a while now, but it does shoot 4K 60, but it is cropped. One negative for some people is it is a pretty large body, like I said before, and it's fairly heavy. So this is a pretty chunky camera, but if you are behind the camera and holding it, it has a nice big grip. And if you need to rig it out and all that kind of stuff, it will be a little bit heavier and actually nicer to shoot with. So if you're a content creator or you're traveling and stuff like that, this is a bigger and heavier camera. So that can be a negative for some people. All right, so why did people forget about this camera? Well, first of all, as I mentioned, the autofocus is not good. It's not reliable. And I think in the day and age of YouTubers and content creators and people reviewing cameras that don't have good autofocus kind of got pushed to the side. And I totally understand that. For a lot of people, they rely on autofocus. This also sells for $4,000, which is very expensive, but now it's a little bit cheaper and you can definitely find them used. As I said, a large body is kind of a negative. It's also made by Panasonic LUMIX, and so I think a lot of people don't give LUMIX a lot of attention, especially on YouTube, and so I think it kind of got forgotten amongst all of the Canon and Sony releases and all that kind of stuff. And when I was researching this camera, I actually went to look for YouTube videos, and it was interesting because there really aren't that many videos on this camera, and most of them were like 3 or 4 years old. So it was interesting going back and watching some of those videos. So it's kind of an interesting camera, and it's got some really cool features, and of course the image quality is incredible, and I'm really looking forward to testing and using this as much as possible. So I do want to mention a couple things if you are watching this late in the video, and you've probably started to notice that I've started experimenting with video styles. I'm going to continue to do that throughout this year. Now, I'm not going to talk about the whole quitting YouTube and all that stuff on this channel. I think there's enough people having that discussion, but I want to talk personally about what's going on is that I want to get more away from just sitting here behind a desk and talking. I know I'm doing this right now, but I really want to get out and shoot and create more like I've been doing the last couple of videos, and hopefully this will inspire you to do that as well. So much content out there with just dudes sitting behind a desk and reading specs, and like I said, I'm going to do my best to go out and shoot more. Of course, there'll be a lot of nerdy test videos and tutorials like you would expect here on the channel when they make sense, but I really want to get out and shoot and show off some of the cool stuff in my area, and I think we all need to do that a little bit more on YouTube. So anyways, that's what to expect coming up on the channel. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and if you did, please hit subscribe. Greatly appreciated. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.